You're on, dude. Go.
Welcome to California Free Radio. My name is Kurt English, and I'm here with Scott Piotr. In the background, you can see the California coastline in Newport Beach looking south to Laguna Beach. On Scott's side, you can see California gas prices. Thanks to the Democrat Party, the party that dominates California currently. But we're trying to change that. Tonight, we're going to talk about some things we talk about every week: fraud in California, government waste in California, the crime wave in California, illegal actions in California. And some of the stuff is amazing. And Scott, I think you have something to say about education.
Yeah, for those of you that didn't hear about it because the mainstream media doesn't want to talk about it, the Department of Education yesterday, that's the federal Department of Education, ruled against the state of California on specifically on gender identity plans. There's a federal law out there that says that it's called FERPA, the acronym, and it's basically that parents have the rights to look at their students' school records, their total school records. And the state of California passed a law, AB 1955, that says, hey, when it comes to gender identity, if the kid doesn't want the parents to know, we're not telling them. And that's state law. In fact, Bonta has sued a couple of school districts in the state to force them to have a policy to share or to hide and lie to parents, whether it be the teacher or the administrator or the DEI person in charge of gender identity plans.
So, Scott, I've
Gender,
got a question. What if a teacher wants to do the right thing and tell the parents?
the teacher will get fired, more than likely.
But didn't we talk about a case last year where the teacher got a nice settlement for a firing like that?
Because she refused to lie. Since then, the
Yes.
law has changed. But yes, I believe that the state of California is putting themselves at
Well,
risk.
but I think it was a federal lawsuit. So
So,
federal law does not require a teacher to lie to parents and cover things up.
in fact, it requires them to make available all of the students' school records, including if they want to change sexes.
But
California,
let's have a little biology lesson, Scott. For those of you that maybe didn't take biology in high school or college, you can't change your sex. It's determined right around the time of conception. There's that X and Y chromosome, and dad determines it because the mother can only give an X. And if you didn't learn that in school, you must have gone to a teacher union dominated school. You can't change your sex. Can't happen. I have
hey,
3 engineering degrees. I'm telling you from a scientific basis, cannot happen.
and for some odd reason, I think it's not an odd reason. I think it's an evil reason. But the state of California has decided that, and liberals in general, that you can change your sex if you just want to believe that you're in the other sex. And even, I mean, I thought this thing was behind us with the 2024 election, but in Congress, about 2 weeks ago, they had this expert in there, and I think it was Josh Hawley, just sat there and said, okay, I have a question. Can men have babies? And she refused to answer the question. And she's an alleged expert. I mean, the
So she
liberals
was a
haven't given up.
doctor. Scott, she was a doctor.
The liberals have not given up on this foolishness. It is crazy. And so the Department of Education basically said to California, look, you have to comply with these FERPA regulations. So we want you, here's what their list is. We want you to self-correct before we decide to take punitive action. And what they are asking for are things like you have to issue a notice to all superintendents and administrators informing them that gender support plans or other related documentation that is directly related to a student are considered educational records under FERPA and are subject to parental inspection upon request. So let the school districts know what the law is. And then publicizing that there is no unofficial records exception to FERPA, and further notifying the superintendents and administrators that AB 1955, the law that was really Scott Wiener, the most evil legislator in Sacramento.
But Scott, tell us a little more about him, and for members of the audience that might not know.
Well, let me hit these other 2 points, and then we'll go into that. And it's good news in a couple of things too. So first of all, they're going to let them have this opportunity to self-correct, and if they don't self-correct, then they are risking losing all of the funding. And currently, the feds give the state of California somewhere around $8 billion plus every year as education grants, et cetera. And they're putting every single penny of that at risk. I'm sure Bonta will be out there filing another long lawsuit. He's the attorney general. So, Scott Wiener. Oh, I may even have a picture of Scott Wiener somewhere I can dig up. But Scott Wiener is a senator. He's now running for Nancy Pelosi's seat
No,
in
a
Congress.
state senator, not a U.S. senator.
Correct. He is a California state senator. By the way, a California state senate, just FYI, it's actually got a bigger district than a congressional district. So a state senator in California is a big deal. There are only 40 of them, and there are almost 40 million people. So they represent roughly a million people each, whereas a congressional district is somewhere around 575 to 600,000.
700, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a much bigger district that they represent, and they think they're hot snot. I mean, it's just the California legislature. But anyway, Scott Wiener, who is an open homosexual who likes to dress up as all sorts of weird things and march in gay pride parades, we would consider it pornographic. And he's out there promoting rules and laws like this. His explanation for AB 1955 is that we're not going to out a student to his parents that doesn't want to be outed by forcing school personnel to tell the parents that the kid is trans or
But
wants
Scott,
to be trans.
that violates the federal law.
It
As
violates
you're
the
probably
federal law.
aware, the Yoder Supreme Court case, U.S. Supreme Court 1971, ruled that parents have an absolute right to determine the upbringing of their children. And what's very difficult for liberals is that's from the same line of cases as Griswold, which allowed contraception in 1965, and Roe versus Wade, which is the liberals' holy grail in Supreme Court jurisprudence.
Well,
And
of course,
so,
the liberals look at the fact that they, as bureaucrats, educational experts, should be raising your children and making these decisions for you. Parents are stupid. You're not allowed to do that.
well, and for our younger members of our audience, Hillary Clinton said 30 years ago that it takes a village to raise your children. The last thing on earth I want is government meddling in the raising of children. They can't do what they do well. So for them to expand the scope of their incompetence, greed, and corruption to other areas, family areas, is outrageous.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember when Obamacare was going around, we were talking about how, hey, Obamacare would be great. We'd have free medical, everything else. And anybody that would say that to me, I just said, okay, tell me one area, just one. I don't care, one area where the government does a good job. I mean, what, the DMV, the post office? Just one. Just give me one example. The Department of Defense, you've got
Wasn't that what Reagan said?
$800 hammers.
Government health care will have the efficiency of the post office and the compassion of the IRS.
Yeah, just what we need. I mean, even the IRS, who everybody dreads and wishes they would be less efficient, is not very efficient. So yes, what area of your life would you want to give to any government bureaucrat? Just pick one. And nobody can do that. Whenever I ask that question, they kind of look at this, with a blank face, blank stare in their face.
Well, and my answer is nothing.
There's nothing. There's absolutely nothing that I would want the government to be able to do. And okay, so here's the sidebar good news that came along with this announcement yesterday, and that is that San Jose State University was found in violation of Title IX. Title IX is what gives equality to women in women's sports, because they had a pretend girl, in other words, a man dressed up like a girl, as a volleyball player on their team. And they basically said, you can't do that. Women's sports are for women. You cannot have men pretending to be women on the team, and found them in violation of Title IX. And they have to correct their actions or lose all of their funding from the federal government.
Now, Scott, let's think about this. You and I played sports growing up. Girls didn't play sports with us. We took care of girls. We didn't, knock them down like you would the boys if you're playing football or
Yeah,
whatever.
you protected them.
Yeah. And so any boy that's a coward and a sissy that wants to play with girls, I have zero respect for. Because he
Well,
can't
duh.
compete. He can't compete with the boys. That's why he's doing this. Coward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And these guys, these boys pretending to be girls are not even required to get the cutadictomy operation. And
Well, but even worse, sometimes they're. But this is in high school, and we talked about this last year during the CIF track championships in the spring. The parents are demanding that they play it, and the parents are demanding that no one criticize them for letting their boy play in girls' sports. They have a sense of enormous liberal entitlement.
oh, they actually go out and brag about it. Hey, my 6-year-old's presenting as trans. Isn't that wonderful? And I'm such a great parent. Kind of like, you're a loser. You should have the kid taken away
Yeah,
and
and you
put in
should go to jail for child molestation.
Yeah, child protective services and these doctors and medical personnel that perform these operations, especially on minors with the cutadictomy or addictomy or cut the breasts off of girls or whatever, they should go to jail. Frankly, if they go to jail, that is like a death sentence because the prisoners understand boys are boys and girls are girls. Even though some idiot liberal lets guys, convicted rapists, say, I'm a girl and go into a woman's prison so they can rape all the women there. And the
Only
prisoners
a,
are like,
only a liberal would think that's a good idea, Scott.
and the prisoners are kind of like, oh, what do I have to do? I just have to kind of swish a little bit and say I'm a girl, and then I can go in and I have all these women that I could sleep with and rape. Hello, what a bunch of blooming idiots. So that's the stupidity of liberalism. What can we say? All right, what do you have as our next
All
issue that you
right, so
want?
let's talk about some of these initiatives, Scott. Proposition 50. Mike Netter, our co-host, who's on assignment tonight, is a plaintiff in a lawsuit against Proposition 50. Do you have an update for us on the status of that, or should we wait till Mike comes back next week?
It hasn't changed from last week, but what happened was, in fact, the deadline was today. Last week, the Supreme Court asked the state of California to respond to the lawsuit that Mike and others had filed at the Supreme Court level. So they appealed the appellate court decision, and what they're asking for is a stay. They want to make sure that Prop 50 is not implemented for 2026, right? And people are starting to pull papers and announce candidacies for the new districts. So I mean, Kevin Kiley, his district was basically divided up into 6 Democrat districts. He doesn't have a Republican district anymore. McClintock's district survived. We're basically going to go from 8 down to 5 and perhaps 3 Republicans representing the state of California out of 51.
And part of that is because they counted illegal aliens in the census when Biden was president.
Absolutely. They're saying now that the census counting the illegal aliens probably gave California as many as 5 additional congressional seats.
Which means 5 additional electoral votes. So it's fraud against the voters.
Yeah, electoral votes plus representation in Congress, and when we're so evenly split in the Congress, 5 more Democrats makes a big difference. That's why Gavin Newsom did Prop 50. So anyway, they were supposed to submit their arguments. I mean, if they still haven't committed to hearing it, but the fact that they asked for their arguments and they did so very quickly is really good news because they don't do that unless they're actually considering jumping in and weighing in on the decision.
So,
And
Scott,
so,
listener Michaels he comments how insane that all is. Do you want to give us your X feed and Mike's X feed where people can watch our show?
sure, you can always watch our show live, and where you can see it is on at Netter Mike or at TaxFighter7. It's scrolling on the bottom of the screen for those that have a screen. And so we're there on X right now at Netter Mike and at TaxFighter7.
And
watch
Michael's watching from LinkedIn.
And we are on LinkedIn as well. And you can Google my name, Piotr, or Netter's name, and or not Google it, but search it on LinkedIn. You can find that connection there. So
All right, the
yes,
CEO Act. If we look at what's streaming on the bottom of our screen, if people want school choice, Scott, they can go to that website, sign the petition, and send it in.
Yes. There's three big initiatives that are going on in California. We'll recap real quick. Voter ID is the biggest one. That one's going great. We've got a lot of signatures. So go to reformcalifornia.org. If you haven't signed it, you can download it, print it, sign it, and mail it in. You have to have a hard copy. You can't do some sort of electronic copy for any of these. And then the next one is
Wow, you mean a paper signature? Maybe we should do ballots like that, Scott.
with real ink. You have to sign it.
Yep.
Yes. And there are specific rules, and on all these websites, it's very clear as what the rules are and how you fill out the paperwork. The other two initiatives, Safe Prop 13, as usual, we had, we we tried to limit what the legislature can do as far as increasing our property taxes. They were going through the roof back in 1978, and never fails. They find loopholes. Well, if this or this happened, then we can go ahead and up your taxes. And they're talking about doing that for commercial properties and a couple of other things. So this will close those loopholes. A very big deal. Go to Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. It's hjta.org. It's on the bottom of the screen.
And Scott, whenever liberals can raise taxes, they do. In Virginia, the Democrat Party took over in the 2025 November elections, and radical left-wing Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger won the governor's race, lying to voters, claiming she was going to be a moderate. And immediately they want to raise the income tax in the state of Virginia from 5 point something to 13 point something percent. That's 2.5 times.
She didn't even wait 24 hours. She started implementing all these liberal wacko stuff right away. One of the things that they want to do is they want to do the same system like they have in California and have top two primaries. So the top two vote getters go to the November race, not the winning Democrat and the winning Republican. So, if you get a race in there where you get four Republicans duking it out for the Republican nomination and two Democrats, it could very easily, even in a Republican district, the two Democrats would be the top two vote getters, and you'd get a Democrat who would not be representative of the district. And that's the problem we have in California.
And that's what they're trying to do. Hey, Stephanie, who's watching us on Facebook, good evening to you as well. Scott, let's talk about the billionaire tax. This would be a one-time, the Service Employees International Union, liberal activists, want to circulate a petition and put up for a vote of the people of California to try to steal, confiscate 5% of the net worth of a billionaire in California.
Supposedly just a one-time deal. We'll take 5% and tax.
If it passes, then they'll do
we won't tax anymore.
Do it again, and another initiative to do it again.
Well, and then they're going to lower it. Yeah, they're going to lower it to, people that have 500 million or more, or maybe 250 million, because you really don't need all of that money. Obviously, you need to share some of that.
Yeah. But Scott, what that really is a violation of the Fifth Amendment's takings clause. It's a taking without just compensation. That we needed in order to tax incomes at the federal level, you needed to pass the 16th Amendment in 1913. So there's no amendment that has modified the Fifth Amendment's prohibition on takings. Similar to the so-called mansion tax in Los Angeles City, where if you sell your house for $5 million or $10 million, it triggers an automatic tax.
Right. So there's a lot of houses that sell for 4.99999
and a consulting fee. Yeah, right.
And the $5 million is the border breaking point. I don't know. Is that one being challenged in court, or is that?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so I'll defer to you as far as the takings, but the intent of it is we're going to do it. And as a result, half of the billionaires, because there's probably only about 30,
50, 100.
Half of them have left California. They've made other states their principal residence, and so they will no longer be paying income tax in the state of California at all, except on income that's actually produced in California.
Whereas the other problem you have is they're going to move their businesses to more rational states, and all those employees are going to leave. All that purchasing power is going to leave. The butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, and the auto repair guy are going to lose business too. It's a cascading effect when you drive businesses out of a state.
And you're right. There's been a lot of people that have pointed out the fact that what they've done by having these businesses like Chevron's relocating, Wells Fargo is relocating. They had an announcement just this week, right? Wells Fargo is moving their wealth services group to Florida. And
Well, they're moving their headquarters out of California. And you might recall from your California history, Wells Fargo was started when, Scott? As a result of the gold rush.
1849. Hey,
yeah, as a result of the gold rush.
The
1853 or two, I think, but yeah, it's a gold rush company.
Well, that's why they call it the 49ers, right? It was 49 before we became a state in 1850. But they're not. They went out of their way to tell everybody that they're not moving their corporate headquarters out. It's just this wealth management group.
Corporate headquarters. See the conga line leaving California, Scott.
It is. Time. And these guys that are in the wealth management group, they're middle class guys, right? They're not wealthy guys. They sell to wealthy guys and they manage wealthy guys' assets, but they're really middle class guys. And so when they move that group out, I think the estimate was 200 or something like that employees that they were moving to Florida. Those are middle class employees. Basically, what you're going to be left with in the most beautiful state with the best weather on the planet, you're going to be left with the uber wealthy that can afford. Most often, those are elderly, and the young or poor. And I have
government workers and hotel and restaurant workers, just like Hawaii, Scott. They hollowed out the middle class in California.
I have 3 kids. They all live in different states, none of which is California. It's just they can't afford to live here.
I can tell you from personal experience, when I was in my 20s, we would go out on Newport Beach, Redondo Beach, Santa Monica, the areas where single people went out. And it was teeming with people in their 20s. Now, when I go out on Newport Beach, it's teeming with people who are getting ready to retire or empty nesters. Why? Because their kids cannot afford to buy a house in the areas they grew up in.
Plus, abortion wasn't legal when you were born. So there's a lot fewer young people. Because they've murdered them all.
I think it's that they've left and they're not here. The only place I see young people is if I go to this dive on the peninsula. Some of the UC Irvine students go there because they can afford to eat there. But look at restaurant prices, because all the things we've talked about on the show the last couple of years. Restaurant prices have gone through the roof. And if you go out to dinner, as our listeners and viewers know, it's expensive to go out to eat now. Prices have doubled.
Hey, but the good news is, if you're a waiter or a waitress, you no longer are paying taxes on your tips. Thank you.
The first $25,000 that you earn in tips is tax-free.
Well, it doesn't matter how much I earn; it'll be less than $25,000. I don't know what your problem is.
Well, but I'm saying is only your first $25,000 in tips is tax-free. But the solution is, if you want to help your server, Scott, pay your tip in cash.
Yep. Then it doesn't count towards that $25,000.
Who's going to know?
Who's going to know?
So even if you put a tip on the thing, if you get great service, you can always let your server know that you left some cash in there that's not designed to be split because of excellent service.
But I have some. Did you know that you still have to pay California income tax on it?
Yes, of course. Now, our governor, Newsom, weighed in just today on the billionaire tax. Scott, do you know what he said?
I have no idea, but I could guess.
Governor Newsom says, I urge you to support the billionaire tax. Our patients' lives depend on it. That's right, Scott. If you don't raise taxes, people will die.
Are those
hyperbole Democrats use all the time?
Are they illegal immigrants?
Don't know. That's a good question.
We're paying for the illegal immigrants' health care. I'm wondering if he's referring to illegal immigrants that are going to die. That'd be a great spin. We ought to put that out. Newsom wants to kill illegal immigrants by passing the billionaire's tax.
No, he says they'll die, that their patients' lives depend on passing it.
Yeah,
so if you don't pass it, people will die. because they waste so much money, they steal so much money, they launder so much money that they still need more of it, or
So,
people will die.
speaking of illegal immigrants, they have a new acronym out there to describe protesters. It's called awful, right? AWFUL. Awful. What does it stand for?
I'll be the straight man. Scott, what does it stand for?
Affluent white female urban liberals. So all these wacko white women liberals that are protesting the ICE actions in Minnesota, which you can look on X and other places, a huge percentage of them are white liberal women. There are men out there too. They're all pussies, but there's a bunch, mostly white women.
Well, look at this nut job that got himself killed because he brought a gun and an extra magazine to a protest. Now there's video of him starting a violent confrontation with ICE agents and wrestling with them. So this guy was looking for a fight. You can't do that with law enforcement officers. You can't pick fights with them when they're doing their job.
Well, you shouldn't be able to pick a fight with them. I mean, if you put me in charge, I would basically say anybody that gets within 10 feet of an ICE officer gets arrested for,
interfering with their legal duties.
Yeah, exactly. I don't care. And if they start whistling, using the whistles and screaming, that's interfering too. And they can be 50 feet away. I don't care.
Well, Scott, it's not just on site. In Minnesota, they were using a phone application Signal to organize in a conspiracy to interfere with law enforcement activities.
And that's really scary. I was watching or reading Amuse, AMUSE. He's on X at @Amuse, and he talks about Signalgate. They're calling it the anatomy of a domestic insurgency. This is nothing less than an insurgency. At the very least, it's a RICO Act violation, right? It is organized crime trying to defeat legal activities, right? And what were they doing with the Signal app?
They were organizing essentially a conspiracy to obstruct law enforcement.
Yeah, so the Signal app is encrypted. You have to be on the group that you're invited to be able to get these text messages. So they were sending out basically encrypted messages to their army on where ICE is. Hey, we need some protesters over here right away. And, when the guy got shot, hey, we need some observers. We need some camera guys. It's organized crime. And, this guy that got shot, he put himself physically in between. He was wrestling, with an ICE officer, and he had his concealed carry weapon, which he had a permit to carry, which I'm surprised because I didn't think Minnesota actually issued those. And evidently the gun fell out of his pocket. So immediately the ICE officer yells gun, and two ICE officers shoot this guy. And, if you're going to be putting yourself in a foolish situation, you don't bring a gun to it.
Well, when Sean Hannity on his radio program talks about the years he's had a concealed carry permit, he said, but if I get pulled over by a law enforcement officer, I put both hands out of the window of my car and I immediately inform him I have a concealed carry permit. I have a loaded gun in the car.
Yeah, exactly. And he could have done the exact same thing in that situation.
There's a protocol for gun safety that everybody who gets a permit is supposed to use. There's a protocol.
Well, it's not in law. It's just if you want to save your stinking life, these are smart things to do type of a thing.
Yes, the question is, was the officer reasonable when somebody who's being hostile is pulling a gun on him and defending himself? And the answer is yes. Do you know that death threats are up 8,000% the last year against ICE agents? Pam Bondi says she is investigating the funding sources of these. These are paid protesters, by the way. There's ample evidence of that online.
Yes, and
Why are we arresting every funder, every organizer, and every foot soldier in this violence? Arrest them all, prosecute them, take away their government jobs, take away their government benefits, and even medical people. Scott, did you see the medical nut jobs? A nurse and maybe a couple of nurses that were saying they were going to poison MAGA people intentionally in the hospital.
yeah, they ought to be arrested and put in jail.
Well, one of them lost her. They're going after her license, or she's already lost her nursing license in whatever state that was,
Well,
Florida or
there,
someplace.
there was a nurse in Florida that when Caroline Levitt, the president's press secretary, and JD Vance's wife kind of both said they were pregnant about the same time, and the nurse in Florida said something along the lines of, "I hope they get ripped from bow to stern and can never shit properly again," you know. And it's kind of like she got fired right away, but she's in Florida where they do things like that.
Well, but the hospital would be worried if I was the lawyer for that hospital, I'd be worried that anything that went wrong would be a lawsuit magnet after the big mouth shot her mouth off like that. You can't have employees in medical saying stuff like that, or you're just a target for lawsuits. It's stupid.
Right. You have to fire them, and it has to be a very public firing that you're not tolerating that kind of crap.
And so we talked about liberals and the stupid things they did earlier. Hot off the presses, Scott, that the Abigail Spanberg and the liberals did just what they did here in California, and they raised electricity rates. But in Virginia, some electricity bills are nearly tripling.
And all in the name of climate change, no doubt. Climate
Oh, of
change
course.
hoax.
Oh, yes. This is such a fraud. It gets cold. Oh, it's global warming. It gets hot. Oh, it's global warming. And that's why they had to stop calling it global warming, because none of that made any sense. But
Especially in
Scott,
December or
everyone knows
January.
there's climate change. We knew that as kids. It's called the four seasons:
It's called the weather.
winter, spring, summer,
Hey,
and fall. The
the
weather
weather
changes.
the weatherman has trouble predicting the weather next week. How in the heck is he supposed to predict it 30 years or 50 years from
Well,
now?
that's another evidence of the fraud. It's just fraud. It's a way to separate you from your rights and your money. Like P.T. Barnum said 150 plus years ago, there's a sucker born every minute. Today, we call them Democrat voters.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I love this little meme I'll put on the screen here. It's abolish ICE now on one side, the other side is Ku Klux Klan guy, and the meme says weaponizing politics since 1865, Democrats. You know, it is ridiculous. I mean, in my opinion, this is an insurgency. This is here's another meme, and for those that aren't looking at the video, Gavin Newsom calls up the California National Guard. Trump has no respect for state sovereignty. I mean, what's the difference between that and the other quotes by, like this one is Francis Wilkinson Pickens. He was the 1860 governor of South Carolina, and he was the first to secede in firing on Fort Sumter. Or Jefferson Davis, 1862 president of the slave-holding states. Lincoln has no respect for state sovereignty, supposedly. I mean, give me a break. What's different about this? You're a history guy. What's the difference between what Walz and Newsom and Pritzker are doing compared to
Well, but Scott,
what
here's
they
what's
did in
really
the South?
going on. We see the nonsense in Minnesota, and it's unbelievable that they're tolerating this crime. Trump should crack down. But what's really going on is if you look at Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and America, what's happening? Liberals are claiming we need diversity. They're not calling for diversity in Africa. They're not calling for diversity in Latin America. They're not calling for diversity in Asia. Only white countries need diversity.
And Kurt disappeared. Let's see what he has to say. Bring him on back. Are you there?
Yeah, I guess somebody didn't like my comment. Only white countries are supposed to have diversity. So
Yeah,
what's
what's with
happening
that?
is they're trying to flood Europe, Canada, America, New Zealand, and Australia, with
Yeah.
third world ignorant poor people that want their hands out and want free stuff.
And a lot of it is also Muslim, and
Yes.
it's driven by the Islamic Jihad, and they want to take over our countries by birth rather than by revolution.
Well, and the problem is Sharia law is primitive, and Islam is not a religion. It's a political system that has a religion as a political tactic. Islam is a primitive, violent, evil cult. And
Yes,
so,
and it's relatively new. I mean, it came around in the 7th
yeah,
century.
anybody who's marrying 9-year-olds and killing people, Jesus preached peace, and Muhammad preaches violence and war. It's all over the Quran. So Sharia law says that you cut off people's hands if they steal. Women have no rights. They throw homosexuals off roofs. And if that's how liberals want to live, they can move to a Muslim country. But let me tell you what's going to happen in the home of the gun, which is America. If you try to impose Sharia law here, you're going to have an all-out civil war. The Democrats are importing a civil war. We are not going to live their way. We're not going to stop eating bacon. We're not going to let them marry their cousins. We're not doing any of that stuff.
I'm not giving up my bacon. Come on.
Hey, guys. So what I think the liberals are trying to do is they're trying to flood the zone with illegal aliens and then falsely register them to vote, take over, and impose dictatorship.
So, we were sitting there talking about Minnesota fraud. And Minnesota fraud, they're guessing that of the $18 billion of money, that $9 billion of it is fraud. And that's just in the child care and some of the other things that they're doing, right? Or the leering centers that they put up. But the California, we have Dr. Oz out there now. First of all, he found that $1.5 billion worth of fraud for free healthcare for illegals. Now, the feds have said you cannot use Medicare money for funding medical for illegal aliens. And so California plays the shell game and says, okay, we're going to take the money we get from the feds and we're going to pay for this. And then we're going to take money that we normally would have given over there and we're going to use that to pay for illegals, right? So they still are doing it, but they're just taking, money's fungible, right? Well, Oz has found that, in fact, there's been $1.5 billion of direct payments for healthcare for illegals in violation of federal law.
Well, now, Scott, let's think about that. Put this in the same context of other California fraud we've talked about in recent weeks on this show. 250 billion of overall fraud is estimated in California, and the feds are now investigating California. Los Angeles, billions unaccounted for. Homeless programs in California, 24 billion spent, zero ability to audit or account for them where the money was spent. And then look at the train to nowhere that the feds are cutting off federal funding on. In total, California is a money laundering and fraud machine. Let's be honest.
Oh yeah, and it makes Minnesota look like a piker. It's we've got 40 million people here.
But
The scale of the state is such that it's natural that we're going to have $250 billion of fraud if we're as fraudulent as Minnesota.
yeah, but
And we
Scott,
are.
there's a guy named Herb Morgan who's a finance guy running for the California State Controller.
Yes.
And he came to a separate conclusion that the fraud is now probably at least $250 billion. Okay, then.
I hope that we get more details on that. And of course, I don't have any confidence that the media is going to do it. So that's why we're here telling people behind the blue curtain what's really going on.
Well, but it's not just the governments. We've heard this horror story about these Somalis that were imported by Obama into Minnesota, and they're stealing blind from American citizen taxpayers. Blue Cross Blue Shield had a whistleblower employee that now claims that the insurance company taught Minnesota fraudsters how to make false claims and then receive kickbacks. So it's not just the
Ooh,
government, the
ooh,
insurance company
ooh.
people are looking for kickbacks too.
So I wonder, were they individuals within Blue Shield that were getting kickbacks? Must have been. You know,
Wouldn't surprise me if it's everybody. There's so
O-
much fraud and so much corruption. Probably everybody's got their hand out, Scott.
Obamacare, one of the things that they're finding out is that the big winners in Obamacare have been the insurance companies because they hire the insurance companies to manage it, and the insurance companies have a built-in profit. It's like Southern California Edison when it comes to electricity. They're going to get their costs covered and they're going to make a profit. It's built into the mix. And if their costs go up, there's no incentive for them to keep their costs down because their costs get covered and they get a profit. And the profit's a percentage of their overall expenses. So the more they spend, the more profit they get.
It's ridiculous. So our listeners know how we've been all over Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom in the Department of Water and Power and the Fire Department of LA about the failures related to the Los Angeles fires and the rebuild.
You betcha.
So uh, there's no, as you know, as an architect and doing projects in Los Angeles County, there's just no permits and no rebuilding to speak of. So President Trump ordered federal agencies to take over the Los Angeles wildfire rebuild, Scott.
That's fantastic. I mean, I deal with the LA building department all the time on my day job, right? And they are a bureaucratic nightmare. And you cannot get permits quickly through them, and their inspectors are overworked and underpaid, and it's just a nightmare to do all the paperwork and get it all done. Here's what I had stated were some goals or some rules when this thing first happened. That if the city of LA wanted to actually accomplish this, they could do it, and they should do it quickly. And they're very simple. If you're proposing to build a house within 10% or less of the original structure size, um, and you have a licensed engineer or an architect that prepares the plans, I would say no permit required or no plan check required. You submit your plans, they check the zoning, make sure you're complying with the setbacks, and you got a licensed engineer or architect sign it. You issue the permit with no fee, and then you start construction right away, and then you inspect like normal. So you would cut out months and months of delays, and you make the engineer or the architect liable and responsible, which
They
generally he
already
is.
are. They already are.
Exactly, and that's why you have errors and emissions insurance and other things as a licensed professional. But uh, you got these guys that are already got their own personal licenses and butts on the line, and then they have to go through this plan check process.
Scott was talking about a plan check process. Okay, Scott, continue.
So again, that would simplify. So if the feds want to come in here and make a difference, they ought to adopt a rule like that. Hey, you get an
Scott,
architect,
my
like,
dad built houses, apartment buildings, and real estate projects in Los Angeles for 40 years. Even in his day, the planning department and was incompetent. So nothing's changed.
no, but now the building department.
And now the building department's doing nothing because it's run by Karen Bass and the incompetent people of the city of Los Angeles.
No doubt, no doubt. So
Scott, let's talk about California's continuing crime wave. Many of our viewers and listeners know where Studio City is. It's just north of Hollywood and near North Hollywood in the San Fernando Valley, near the Hollywood Bowl. And there was a Los Angeles homeowner that woke up to a burglary and fired shots on suspects in Studio City, which used to be a really nice neighborhood. One of the 5 members of the Go-Go's band lived in Studio City once upon a time.
trivia that I don't care about. Go ahead.
Well, but see, I'm a lifelong Californian, at least for now. But like many people, we're looking at options. It's time to look at options if things don't
So
improve.
what happened when the guy opened fire? Did he kill any of them?
Don't know. I think a 16-year-old might have been injured and ended up in the hospital. But
Hey,
remember, on our show, we've talked about in Woodland Hills, where I spent a lot of time as a kid, there was a fatal shooting, a home invasion robbery with illegal aliens. There's home invasion robberies in Encino now, where I spent a lot of time as a kid, near the Jackson family compound on Havenhurst, south of Ventura Boulevard.
is that good or bad?
Well, those are $1 million plus homes. So if you have
Yeah,
a
but what home in California isn't $1 million plus home? It seems like
oh, you
every
go to
home.
Bakersfield, they're not a lot of $1 million homes. You
Oh,
go
yeah,
to
okay,
Rialto,
but in Southern
if you go to
California,
Blythe, not a lot of
different.
$1 million homes. Or if you go to the far north of California, Eureka, everything north of Chico, not a whole lot of $1 million homes, Scott.
Yeah, but I bet if you were to sit there and look at all the $1 million homes that are in California, that it would probably be greater than practically the whole rest of the country combined.
I don't know, but what I can tell you is coastal Southern California has become very expensive to live in. We talked earlier in our program today about how kids that grew up in coastal Southern California cannot afford to buy a home in the neighborhood they grew up in.
Yeah, yep,
And
but
then in these expensive homes, like I'm aware of I did not attend this, but I am aware that they were having illegal poker games in Encino and Irvine and other places during the COVID shutdown.
yeah, where the feds or Newsom and his mask mandates couldn't get them.
Yep, indeed. Now, apparently, the crime wave isn't just for adults, Scott. There was a Southern California toddler that was whose dad was posting his NFL picks online, and the kid got a reputation for picking NFL games properly, which no 4-year-old would do. But then I guess he missed a pick and was getting death threats online. What's with that, Scott?
so so the dad does it, if you do it in good nature and doing the picks, and boy, my kid's able to pick the right guy. I mean, it's kind of like I could see it all being in fun. And if it's not in fun, that dad ought to be locked up. But for people to sit there and actually put a lot of money on what this 4-year-old says, and they get mad at the 4-year-old, you're sick, you need to go to jail. Sorry.
So, Scott, in addition to Democrats increasing crime and trying to suppress your political rights and cut off your kids' genitals, now the California government is fighting to limit energy supplies. So California is suing the Trump administration over the federal government's plans to restart oil pipelines along the California coast. I guess Democrats didn't take basic economics like I did at the University of Southern California, where you learned about supply and demand.
Well, we got a couple of refineries that are shutting down. They were able to talk Valero into postponing their shutdown for a little while. But the reality of it is they don't like gasoline. They don't like so-called fossil fuels. They want to get rid of it and have us be all electric. They don't have new electricity. They don't have a way to produce new electricity, but hey, that's not their problem figuring stuff out, right? That'll happen. And so they're trying to make it ultra expensive, which is why you can see my gas prices behind me. Um, and basically convert us all over to electric cars. So yeah, they're going to do whatever they can to cut fossil fuels wherever they can. And Trump comes in after getting elected in a landslide and opens up everything, right? He's opening up all sorts of land for drilling. He's opening up pipelines. He's opening up refineries that were starting to shutter. He's drill, baby, drill. And the price of gasoline in the rest of the country is like $2 to $3 max. And here we are. If you're lucky to find something at $4, you're lucky. Most of it is at $5. And it's crazy.
But
Well,
Scott, it's intentional. First, California has the highest gas taxes, but liberals don't want you to have freedom.
or a car.
So they don't want you to be able to drive because people who can drive can't be controlled as easily.
Well, that kind
And
of goes along with their new plan. They've got a plan now tax the mileage that you drive. They're going to tax you by the mile.
It'd be a shame if that equipment in the car somehow didn't work. But yeah.
Well, the fact that they want to put a spy device in your car to track your mileage so they can charge you a tax for it is absolutely ridiculous. It's not going to
Oh,
go
but
on.
Scott, all the Democrats in Congress and a few Republicans, just in the last number of days, voted to allow car companies to put a switch that in your car so the government can shut down your car at will. No warrant, no conviction, just government control of your mobility. Did you know that?
Hence the reason I drive old cars with very little electronics in it.
Yep, that's one solution indeed. Now, um, the problem is that there's people that are stupidly voting for Democrats. And one of the reasons is our education system has been so bad for so long. Thank God I escaped from Los Angeles City Schools before liberals destroyed it. And I got my high school degree. It'll be interesting to see at my next reunion if any of my classmates recognize the destruction as well. But Newsom's education legacy is thankfully his term as governor will end soon this year, is rising costs for education and declining performance.
Spending
Scott,
more
would
and
you
getting
send
less
a child
results.
or a grandchild to public schools in California today?
Heck no. Heck no.
No.
I would
No
definitely
way.
I would definitely be homeschooling my kids if I had them today. And my son is homeschooling his kids for that reason. Even though
Well,
he's
and
not.
Scott, sadly, 94% of Christian schools are using public school textbooks, the liberal propaganda books, stupidly.
Common
Stupid.
Core kind of stuff.
Trash, yes. Just America bad, diversity is good, stuff that has nothing to do with the 3 R's. So one of the other, in addition to dumbing down our population, they want to suppress the rights of churchgoers. We recall they tried to leave pot shops and liquor stores open during the COVID shutdown, but close churches. And John MacArthur, who died not too long ago in Los Angeles City, refused to shut his church down and won a court victory against this tyranny. But we look at what happened in Minnesota. Entitled liberal privilege protesters went into a church and thought they were entitled to disrupt a church service and lecture the churchgoers on their radical left-wing politics.
Including disgraced reporter, so-called Don Lemon, right?
A homosexual who probably doesn't go to church.
Who is a homosexual and probably doesn't go to church unless he's there to disrupt it.
Right.
But
So-
supposedly he was only there to report on it. I'm just asking the question.
But let's look at what's happening in California, Scott. There are churches in California where if you go there on Sunday, quietly and secretly, there's a lot of people who are armed because of the threats against Christians that are encouraged and fomented by liberal hate and discrimination against traditional Americans.
It really is a sad commentary that the churches have to go to the extreme effort of training people to keep people safe in those situations. To keep active shooters down, to have volunteers that have their CCWs attend, to use radio contacts to stay in touch, not necessarily the Signal app, but whatever happened to the days where a church would be, considered sacrosanct even by bad guys. Not so anymore. That tells you that we really have a struggle of good versus evil.
Yes, now the Democrat Party is not just wrong today, Scott, they're evil. Ralph Reed, who was the head of the Christian Coalition in 1994, came to an event at Galpin Ford off the 405 freeway in the San Fernando Valley at the Roscoe exit.
Yeah.
And he said there's two parties. This is 32 years ago. There's the evil party and the stupid party. And that's where we are today, Scott. In 2026, we have the evil party and the stupid party.
It hasn't really changed that much.
Nope.
Unfortunately.
But fortunately, the Family Research Council and other groups have resources to encourage churches to protect themselves. And so there are initiatives that are underway to make sure that you can go to church safely. That was never a problem in past generations, but liberals destroy everything they touch,
Well,
and that's the problem.
the FACE Act, FACE, it's a federal bill, and it's designed to protect abortion clinics from protesters. But it also has a clause in there that uh, says you're not supposed to interrupt or interfere with church services. So there's a nice Democrat-sponsored law that Trump can use to go after those jerks in Minnesota that disrupted that service. And I say, throw the stinking book at them to make sure that they're an example, and it scares the poop out of anybody else that tries to do something similarly.
So, Scott, a minute ago, we talked about the failed fire response in California and Los Angeles. But did you know that there's these secret high cost executive pay increases at the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power?
Oh, so they can leave another reservoir empty in fire season?
Yeah, the DEI head of the Department of Water and Power was a Hispanic woman who Karen Bass doubled her salary to 750 grand a year, but couldn't bother to fill the reservoir at the top of the hill in the Palisades so that you could have water in the fire hydrant, Scott. But I guess they want to reward their failure, incompetence, corruption, stupidity, and arguably recklessness with higher salaries.
Of course. Why not? Rewarding competence. What are they going to do? Leave and go to the private sector? Like there's a private water company that will pay them more?
We'll pay an incompetent fool 750 grand a year.
You've got limits on what you can do and what you can't do. Obviously, they don't know what those are.
So what about this Sepulveda Basin project that's way over budget? Didn't we have a Measure M half-cent sales tax that was approved by the voters that was supposed to pay for stuff like this?
So what is that project?
It's just another failed LA project. Mayor Garcetti in 2019 wanted to had this silly 28 initiative with a bunch of congestion relieving plans, and it's like this stupid rail project to nowhere. It's just another boondoggle that you spend a bunch of money and get nothing in return.
Is this supposed to be to help us get ready for the Olympics in 2028?
Possibly. In 1984, when I went to the Olympics, Peter Ueberroth ran a great Olympics. Yeah. And there were plenty of low-price tickets available to the preliminary events that were not the glamour events. Yeah, if you want to go to men's basketball final, the women's gymnastics final, you're going to pay a pretty penny.
Right.
If you want to go to the opening or closing ceremony, you're going to pay a pretty penny. But I went to a decathlon preliminary round, a track and field preliminary round, field hockey, water polo, which is not a glamour sport in America, early round basketball, U.S. versus France, when we had Michael Jordan and Patrick Ewing and Steve Alford, and the coach was Bobby Knight from Indiana.
But you could afford the tickets.
$20 to sit in the second row at the Forum and watch the USA team.
And the traffic wasn't bad because everybody left town for vacation that week.
And a lot of the big companies made their employees take their 2-week vacation during the Olympics, and they created such a fear-mongering that everyone booked out-of-town vacations, and the freeways were totally empty during the 2 weeks of the Olympics.
It was great.
But I would encourage everyone, because it's a historical event. Yeah, there's some liberal crap in the Olympics and whatnot, but it's a historical event. Look for some preliminary round tickets. Go to an event. I'm going to take family members.
I question whether or not you're actually going to have the Olympics in LA.
Oh, Trump will take it over if necessary, just like he did with the fire response.
But does he keep it in LA or does he move it someplace else?
Put it in a red state. I don't know. What USC is going to do, USC runs the Coliseum now, and the Coliseum hosted the track and field events in the 1932 Olympics and the 1984 Olympics. So they're going to tear some of the seats out temporarily, raise the field so that they can put a track in it. They've lowered the field so it's not as big anymore, so it doesn't fit a track.
Oh,
And they're going to
because
have
of
the track
football.
and field events at the Coliseum for the 2028 Olympics.
Yeah, but even that's going to take 12 months to do the work, and they haven't started yet.
Well, USC is going to play football there in 2026 and 2027, so they'll probably start after the last game in the 2027 season. So they'll have 9 months to do it.
I have super
Although
doubt.
I'm fine if USC wants to play at SoFi Stadium those couple of years where the Rams
Yeah,
and the Chargers
why
play.
not? I mean, look at Karen Bass. Does anybody think that she's capable of managing the LA Olympics? She can't
Karen
manage
Bass couldn't manage a
anything.
2-car funeral.
That's right. I mean, in the fire and the management of the rebuilding of that is a perfect example. The lady is worthless. She cannot do anything. So that's why we call it the California
Well,
catastrophe.
and Randy, who's following us on LinkedIn, has a thumbs down for Governor Newsom. Yep, Randy, we agree with you. Scott,
Definitely.
California's insurance costs are escalating too. California had the largest California's largest home insurance company has raised its rates and expanded fire zone coverage areas to charge even more.
Yeah, so any area in California under LADWP is going to be paying higher rates because you never know if the reservoir is going to have water in it.
I can't imagine why that would be. So this is Mercury and AAA insurance. So AAA is not going to have such cheap insurance anymore, Scott.
Surprise, surprise. You know what happened with all of these people that didn't have fire insurance up in the Palisades because they couldn't get it because State Farm and all these other people stopped writing new policies. They had to go to the California co-op, so to speak, to get their insurance. And California co-op was funded $20 million or whatever the number was. And of course, they ran out of money like in 2 days after the fires.
It's
So,
ridiculous. So,
so
Scott, we're toward closing time here. I want to give a shout out to our Iranian expat friends in Irvine, California, who regularly protest against the Islamic fascist regime in Iran. And now we have an opportunity to topple this criminal regime that's killed Americans. And your friend Amuse on X wrote a little article that our listeners would find interesting about that Iran's crisis shows why maximum pressure works and why Europe should follow Trump's lead here. So our hope is for the people who've been forced out of Iran, some of whom I know, whose families had all their stuff stolen by the Ayatollahs because they weren't supporters back in 1979, the dads, and had to come here with nothing and start over. So hopefully those people will get their country back, and we will force the Ayatollahs to have a little bit of accountability here. So a shout out to those of you who are protesting in the United States for your home country. Good for you.
And unfortunately, it's really sad because it sounds like um, the Ayatollah over there, even though he told Trump, we're not going to hang anybody, the numbers that are coming out are in the 40 to 60,000 people murdered range.
Well, Scott, let's remember what the Quran says. It's okay to lie, cheat, and steal against non-Muslims because we're not real people.
Yeah, but these are young Persian people that
it doesn't matter. It's okay in the Quran.
But they're probably
Remember, Islam
Muslim.
is a political system of tyranny and despotism. Why do you think they care?
Well, supposedly they're Muslims that they're killing and murdering.
No, I understand only 30% of Iran is Islamic.
I couldn't tell you one way or the other.
So let's close on a lighter note, Scott. Remember, 6:30 next week, we'll be back with you on California Free Radio on Thursday. Usually when you go to the grocery store, Scott, you kind of think your food's going to be safe, right? But
doesn't the FDA guarantee that?
Well, they're supposed to. But apparently there's some candies that were tested by the FDA for something called arsenic. And if you don't know what arsenic is, it's an element on the periodic table. But when we were kids, bottles of arsenic would have a skull and crossbones because it's poisonous and you could kill people with enough arsenic. But for some reason, 80% of the candies they tested had elevated levels of arsenic, including gummies and other stuff like that. Now, Scott, can someone explain to me? I'm not a food guy and a chemistry guy, but why would you put arsenic in candy?
At least on purpose, right?
Why would you allow arsenic to be in candy? One of them was the Hershey's product, the cookies and cream Hershey bar. Okay. And these are large manufacturers. I mean, come on, guys. Arsenic, really? This is the kind
I
of stuff that lets communists say capitalism sucks when capitalists are stupid. Don't be stupid when you run a company.
Well, according to Google, companies don't intentionally put it in, whether it's more of a present as a containment due to environmental factors in the production process.
Okay,
Now,
Scott,
I don't know how you accidentally get arsenic in your system.
because you don't test your raw materials, maybe? Okay, I've been involved in a lot of manufacturing companies. We order raw materials to a spec. We say these are the chemicals we want in the brew. These are the chemicals we don't want in the brew. And if you test them and you find arsenic, you're going to tell your chemical supplier, hey, morons, don't put arsenic in our brew.
Yeah, so it says arsenic is naturally occurring element found in the environment and it can be present in soil and water. Now we're talking about, what's the intensity or the concentration of it
Yeah,
as
the
to whether
concentration is the issue, Scott. I
it's the
mean,
exposure.
if you have lab rats and you give them enough garlic, you can kill them, but garlic is not a poisonous substance.
Well, I think lab rats cause cancer.
But remember, they use lab rats instead of lawyers because there's some things you just can't get a rat to do. All right,
It's a
6:30
good
next
thing.
Thursday, California Free Radio. Uh,
And Mike will be with us again next Thursday.
yeah, think about how much corruption we'll find for you in California over the next 7